glad you're here with us today on our Ship LinkedIn Live, and I am very honored to have two very special guests today, Judy Schoenberg and Linda Lautenberg. Thank you both so much for spending time with us.
Hi, thanks, Anne. Thanks for having us.
It's great to be here.
We're so happy to have you. We have such a great discussion planned for everybody today. But before we start, just a bit of housekeeping. So we have a discussion planned. But if you have any questions and you're watching live for Linda and Judy, please pop them in the chat and we'll do our best to see them. Also, just to get everything started, we would love to know where you are watching from, if you're comfortable sharing that. And I'm actually calling in from Manhattan, where I live. Judy, what about you?
I am calling in from Brooklyn, New York.
All right. And Linda?
So, yeah, and I'm about an hour outside of New York in New Jersey near the shore.
All right. Awesome. Well, hopefully everyone will just let us know where you're calling in from. We'd love to know. It's always interesting to see where everyone is calling in from and joining us from. And we're so happy you're here. So let's do a little introductions first, and then we'll get into the discussion. I also want to give a shout out to the incredible Kristen and Spencer, one of my shipmates and ship co-founders, who is producing for us behind the scenes. So thank you so much, Kristen, for doing that. We're so happy you're here too. All right. So today, we are going to talk about career ownership. How do you own your value, skills, and talents? And I've known Linda and Judy for a few years now, and they are some of my favorite people to work with. I've been one of the guest experts for their program, the Reinvention Collective. It's a live virtual 12-week training with a cohort of women committed to reinventing professionally. And let me just read a little bit about Judy and Linda, and we will get started. Okay, so Judy Schoenberg and Linda Lautenberg are women's career strategists and co-founders of EvolveMe, a professional growth consultancy. EvolveMe partners with organizational leadership and employee resource groups focused on building and sustaining top female talent and supporting women to engage and advance in their roles. EvolveMe also provides individual and group coaching for women in midlife using their proven DARE, D-A-R-E, method of career development. Their clients call their EvolveMe experience life-changing and the best professional investment they've ever made. EvolveMe has been featured in Fast Company, Forbes.com, CNN.com, Reuters World at Work, HR Magazine, FairyGodBoss.com, and Elevate Network, and many, many career podcasts. Judy holds a master's in education from Harvard University and is a former national executive for Girl Scouts of the USA. I was a Girl Scout, where she managed leadership research and programming. She lives in Brooklyn, New York with her husband, 2 teenage sons, and a feisty rescue dog. Linda earned an MBA from Harvard Business School and holds a chartered financial analyst designation. Her earlier career was in real estate, finance at Prudential and Nomura Securities. She lives near the Jersey Shore with her husband, 1 to 3 kids, depending on college schedules, and way too many pets. That was so fun to read about you both. You're so impressive.
Thanks, Anne.
Awesome. Well, let's get started. And I see a bunch of people are joining us today. We have about 65 people watching right now, which is incredible. So the first question that I have for you to kick off our discussion is, and please, everyone watching, feel free to pop your answer into the chat as well. Judy, how do you feel when you don't have ownership of your career?
Thanks, Anne. Well, in a nutshell, you often don't feel great, right? You can feel frustrated, you can feel kind of disempowered or like stagnant. And so there's different reasons why you might, be feeling this way. One is we hear from a lot of women that we work with in midlife is that you kind of just got on autopilot early on in your career and you fell into something and you don't really love it anymore, right? But you feel like you've invested, so much time that you need to stay there, and you kind of you're just like going through the motions and maybe moving up the ladder, but you're not really feeling like you can really kind of take back control because you've invested so much time and you kind of fell into this. And what can you do next? Like, can you really do anything else? What we also see is that, people often like over-identify with the role that they're in now, right? So they really focus on like their own like title or the role that they're in now, and they really focus like on their job more than they focus on their whole career. So, and focusing on your job, maybe you want to do an excellent role, job in the role that you have now, but you're not thinking about the long view. So you're not really taking stock of like all your skills and your experiences that you've had across your career. And then you feel like a loss of agency because you can't really think about how everything adds up. You're just kind of more solely focused in the role that you have now. And you're not really like leveraging your skills, your talents, your experiences for your next chapter or your next chapter, that long view. So it could really, lead to feeling like you don't have agency, you don't have control, right? And maybe you're just waiting around. A lot of people are waiting around for companies and organizations to give them opportunity. Instead of really, taking back kind of control and really thinking about like what you actually want to do next on your own outside of this role and outside of this title that you have. Who are you as a professional?
You make so many excellent points here, Judy, because what do we ask people usually when we meet them? What do you do? And you identify so much with your title and the company you work for. And what you just described is like, I've done it too in different roles I've had where I have complete tunnel vision. Like this is the only thing I'm good at. Like this is it. And I forget about all these other aspects of my life and professional life.
In fact, sometimes when you leave a role, that's what's true for me. I was at an organization for 15 years. I still identified with that title and role for several years after I left because I wasn't taking ownership of where I wanted to go. I hadn't gone through that process of thinking through, what skills and experiences I wanted to take forward. So only when I did that was I able to kind of shed, okay, like who am I now? I'm not that title anymore, even though I loved obviously a lot of aspects of my former career.
Got it. And Linda, could you share your story as well? And then I'm going to read, the comments are blowing up and people are actually commenting how they felt. So I'll read a couple of those after.
Sure. So another thing that can happen, it happens more to women than men, but can happen to anybody, is that like, I know that at the beginning of my career, I felt like I had everything planned out. I had complete control of my career. Even after I had my first daughter, I had control until I went back after maternity leave and they had basically blown up the department I was working in. And at that point, that's where I lost agency, right? Because I took what I thought was going to be a short career break. And then one thing led to another. And all of a sudden, I was kind of riding the current of what everybody else needed from me. We made a geographic move. I had more children. I got involved in a lot of volunteer organizations. And all of a sudden, years later, I think in the back of my mind, I thought, oh, something's just going to fall into my lap. And I realized I had never taken control of what I was doing and been very purposeful so that I could relaunch my career after. And if you think about when Judy's talking about really over-identifying with your role, imagine somebody that does have a career break. I remember for at least 5 years into my break, I would tell people what I used to do because I didn't want to identify with, oh, I'm a mom. Oh, I'm a volunteer. Right. So imagine the crisis of confidence that comes with that when all of a sudden you feel like you don't have, if all of your identity is attached to that role and that job, and then you don't have that anymore and you're not owning the unique value you bring to the table, to try to recoup that confidence to climb back in or do something else is a monster task.
It's almost like getting lost in a forest.
Yeah.
That's the imagery that I feel like I'm getting as you're describing this to me.
You start to feel like you don't really have anything to offer anymore.
Yeah, I've actually been there myself too, so I completely understand. And I'm going to read one comment from Elaine, and she made a great comment. She said, "When this happens, you're living by the what you do versus the who you are or who you can become."
Yes,
and I think that's so true. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's move on because I know. So we wanted to just sort of describe what it feels like to not have career ownership, but then talk about 3 ownership challenges and how to overcome them. So Judy, I think you're going to share challenge number 1 with us.
Right. So challenge number one that we're going to dig into is that today, you have so many options, right? Elaine, thank you for that comment about like who you are and who you can become. Well, who you can become, like the world is wide open now, right? We're at a point in time when careers are no longer linear. Right. And thanks to the younger generations, people, and also the pandemic, which kind of baked in those pauses, but people are changing jobs, and switching it up every 2 years or so, right? So careers are no longer linear, but then it also breaks things open. And so that there's so many possibilities in front of you that can be overwhelming, and that it could also lead to decision fatigue, right? You have so many possibilities and decisions. And if you're if you're super talented and accomplished, you can do so many different things, right? And zigzag into different industries. So how do you decide, right? That we find with the women that we work with, that can lead to not having direction, and it can lead to a lack of clarity. And then you can go down the rabbit hole of a kind of a crisis of confidence, right? Because you can't decide, even though it seems like, there's remote work now, that's opened up to people. Like there's flexibility, like there's so many different more kind of iterations of how work can be done now. But how do you get to what's a good match for you? Right. And so we think that this is where, kind of figuring out, who you can become, that's an inside job. Right. So one of the ways to kind of distill all the options that are in front of you, and nobody teaches us how to do this. Right. There's no like course you can take, and it's really hard to Google it on your own and sit there in your office trying to figure this out. So, we firmly believe that doing this with like another group, or, find a tribe that's like moving in the same direction of you, like you're going to go farther, faster. And the things that you need to do are, take time, and it takes going inside. So thinking about your strengths and your values, like thinking about your interests and your passions, doing a skills audit, really being honest with yourself about what lights you up now. Because we always say, what you can do doesn't necessarily mean that you should be doing that. Even though you're great at something and you've been exceptional, it doesn't mean that that's the thing that might speak to you right now. And, we really believe in unlocking like your full potential. And so it's only when you take time to do this inner work that you really can unearth, like, what are those sides of you that you haven't really maximized or optimized, and how can you look for opportunities that like help you go in that direction.
Yeah. And Judy, this is such great advice. And I have this conversation often with my career coaching clients as they approach a job transition. And I think a lot of people are very afraid of making the wrong move. Like they want to find the perfect next step. And I'm always like, there's no perfect next step. There's many ways to get from your house to your favorite restaurant. So you can still get where you're going, even if you make some missteps along the way. And sometimes the things that are not quite perfect actually push you more in the direction of getting it right the next time.
Yeah. And that speaks to the whole idea of like, it's a career journey, it's a career adventure, and like explore and like micro experiment your way into it, right? No step is the wrong step. It will all like add up. And maybe you don't see it in the moment if you take a wrong turn or what you perceive as a wrong turn, but that can give you insight into what you don't want to do maybe. So yeah.
Yeah. And your skills are going to accumulate whether it's the right job for you or not. You're still going to be developing your skills. So I feel like that's another thing to really remember. Yeah. Absolutely. No, that is absolutely fantastic advice for everybody. And then I know we've got challenge number 2. I'm going to ask Linda to comment on that one.
Yeah. So the second challenge, and we've touched on this somewhat already, is over-identifying with your title and your role and getting too wrapped up into that. Because, none of us, you're so much more than a title or a role. You are your own person with a set of skills. And, we talk about this with women that we work with in midlife. I talk about this with my kids who are starting their careers. You are the CEO of yourself today. That doesn't mean that you don't love your job or the company that you're at, or that you're not loyal, but you are individually responsible for your own career development and taking charge of that, and not waiting for other people to point you in the right direction or hand it to you, because they're not you. They can't know what is best for you next. And so what you really need to do is, like Judy was saying, really take stock and constantly be doing this, not just once, but constantly reassessing what are your strengths, what's important to you, and then what do you want your career to, like, what are you naturally good at? What do you love to do? And that changes over time. And so many of us, and don't apologize if anybody is out there and you are in a career that you kind of just fell into when you came out of college and you're still there. It happens to everybody, right? But that doesn't mean that you're pegged to be in that role forever. So constantly be taking stock of what is your unique value proposition that you bring, and look outside of your experiences, not just at work, but even outside of work. What do people come to you for in your personal life? Because that can also open up a whole other set of skills, transferable skills, things that come natural to you that can also, you can bring into your work life. And then you want to just think about, in terms of thinking about what's important to you. If you're 20 years into your career, probably what's important to you now is different from what was important to you when you first came out of college. And that's okay. Or even if you didn't go to college, but I'm not assuming that everybody did, but I'm just, what's important to you now, it's always going to change, because life experience just changes you. And so those priorities and values can shift and flux, and you want to take that into account as well. So that you can really think ahead and think about what works for you now, and then also maybe take stock and think about what's on the road ahead, what's on the horizon, what are new skills that you want to grow into, what do you want to learn, how do you want to develop, and also how is your personal life going to impact that, and how do you need to take that into consideration so that everything works together.
Yeah, Linda, I agree with like 100%, 110% everything that you've said just now. And I thought of, for folks who are like, well, I don't know, I actually have some data to share with you that backs up everything that Linda just said. So if you're worried about making a transition, like you've been in something for a long time and you're worried, 85% of your job success is your soft skills. Only 15% is your hard skills. So everything translates. You're great at project management somewhere, you can be great at project management somewhere else. That doesn't change. You're great at conflict resolution, negotiation, persuasion, communication, resilience, grit. Like those are all transferable skills, 100%. And Linda, you brought up a good thing of think about what people ask of you or ask your help with in your personal life. And LinkedIn did a study, and 40% of hiring managers consider volunteer work to be equivalent to paid work.
Yep.
And I know a lot of people out there, myself included, we do a lot of volunteer work, and that can make a difference. And by the way, on LinkedIn, you don't have to put it in the volunteer section. You can put it in the experience section.
Thanks for that.
So you know.
And that actually goes to the micro experimenting that Judy was mentioning when you're thinking about growing and trying new things. Taking on different responsibilities in the volunteer role is a fantastic way to find out if you like flexing a different muscle, or if it comes naturally to you, or you're good at it. So keep that in mind.
Oh, that's fantastic advice. And just for folks who are joining us, we currently have about 83 people watching right now. We're so glad that you're here. Judy and Linda and I are talking about career ownership. And we talked about, just to do a little recap, how do you feel when you don't have ownership of your career? And we're currently talking about 3 different ownership challenges and how to overcome them. And challenge 1 was that there's so many options available today. You can almost get decision fatigue just figuring out what you want to do. And challenge number 2 is that you get too tied up in your identity and role. And you're so much more than just your title and the company that you work at. And so I want to make sure, just in case, so everyone listening, if you've got any questions for Linda and Judy, please pop them in the chat. I'm doing my best. And Kristen, behind the scenes, we're doing our best to watch the comments and chat, but we've got about 10 minutes left. We've got 1 challenge and then a wrap up. So if you have questions, pop them in now and we'll do our best to get to them before we wrap up for the day. Okay, so we have challenge number 3, and I believe Judy's going to talk to us about that one.
Yes, thanks, Anne. So challenge number 3 is you need to own your own professional development, right? And this idea, like goes back to some of the things that we've already been talking about. But the core thing here is that everybody is self-employed, right? So even if you are working at a company, you're responsible for your own growth and development. We've talked about a few ways that you can do that. Volunteering being one of them. And thanks for that tip on LinkedIn. Another thing that's really important for professional development that especially if you're working in a company already that kind of gets to the sideline, it gets sidelined, is building your network. So when you're focused on your job as opposed to your own career and your professional development, you're not necessarily thinking so much about your network. And when I was, employed at, at an organization for many years, you're not on LinkedIn as much, right? And being that thought leader and putting out your own ideas. You're not maybe, going to external conferences and things like that. And we know that, people land new opportunities and new roles. 80% of those come from personal and professional connections. So the number one thing you can do, and I didn't take this advice myself when I was employed. I had 500 connections on LinkedIn, and now several years later, I have 5,000. So I really did this very intentionally and built a network, because it's so important for your own growth to be with people who are outside of your field. For me specifically, all my contacts were in the nonprofit sector, and now being kind of exposed to all different industries, it's really a way for you, to grow. Also, when you are working too, there's ways that you can have, kind of take back control of your professional development by having career conversations, open conversations with your manager, right? So being very transparent about how you want to grow in the role that you have, but even beyond that, and maybe there's opportunities that you can job craft within the role that you have to kind of tweak your responsibilities, the kind of initiatives you work on, the relationships you have, so that you can even grow in the role that you have that you have now. So this all goes back to again, like putting your job, before your career is not going to kind of work for you as an individual in the long run. And so, yes, we want to do excellently in the jobs that we have, but we also have to be thinking about, how we want to grow individually. And there's like a parallel process going on there that can be achieved within and without, from the organizations that we're in.
I get that. It's almost like doing your 1, 5, and 10-year planning, right? Like your short-term planning is like, what do you have to do now? And then long-term, like, where are you actually going? And I think if it's like, if you just take a walk and you're like, you don't have a plan, you're going to end up wherever. But if you're like, oh, I have to get to this space, then you will, even if you take a meandering path.
Right. And that is work that no organization or company is really going to encourage you to create your 5, or 10-year plan, because obviously, like, they probably want to keep you if you're doing a great job, but that's something that you need to take on for yourself. And there's ways to do that, especially with other people who are, moving in the same direction of you, that gives you momentum.
As they were describing this, Judy, I was looking back at the challenges, and I feel like number one is kind of like the environment, like, is very different. Like, it can be overwhelming, the environment. And then challenge number 2, your identity is tied up with your role. That's like knowing yourself and taking a step back and like looking at yourself more objectively. And I think sometimes it's easier for someone else to see you than you to see yourself. Do you know, which I have this concept, and I've read a lot of resumes, and whenever someone hands me their resume, most of the time it's like, okay, it's not great. But when I start to talk to them, I'm like, you're actually really cool. You're amazing. How do we get this 3D person onto this 2D page? So for everyone out there listening, you're more amazing than you think you are. You just don't know it yet. I have proof. I have years of proof about this. There's like the mindset piece. And then challenge number 3 is like taking ownership of that and like realizing your strengths, like realizing the environment, figuring out what you want to do next. It doesn't have to be perfect. Realizing who you are, and then taking ownership and taking steps to do that, because no one's going to care about your career as much as you do.
Right. Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. And these are all, and just so everybody knows, we had a planning meeting earlier this week, and when we were discussing, and everything content-wise is all from Linda and Judy. I just wrote it down. So you all came up with this incredible path. It's so cool. All right. I know we have to wrap up soon. So are there any takeaways that you'd like people to walk away from this conversation? Like, is there a next action or a few next actions that they could take if they feel lost and like they don't have ownership and what they can do next? And I'll throw it out to both of you as a question.
Sure. So like one easy exercise this is easy to do. I mean, because going back to what we were saying about this work is very hard to do by yourself. You can get lost in your head and you're going to be the first person that says no to yourself. Right. So, find a group of women or men and women that you, that know you well, to go through this process together. Get a coach, work with somebody like Anne, join a program like the Reinvention Collective, but somehow, find some kind of a group that you can start really delving into what are, figuring out your unique value proposition. What do you want to do? What do you want to be known for? What are your skills? So that you can really start to chart a path for yourself. It's very difficult to do on your own. And one really fun exercise is think of 3 people that know you well, but maybe in different ways, and ask them what they see as your strengths. And it can be really enlightening because it could be they can end up giving you feedback that you never would have thought. And it can be very confidence building and very enlightening.
I love that. That's a great idea. I might do that myself. Actually, right after this.
Ask Judy and I will tell you.
Oh, well, thank you.
And I would add too that when you think about owning your career, like to not think about your career in such a siloed way as just about your work. So the way that we've worked has changed so dramatically the last 4 years. So think about your future work life, your future career in a 360-degree holistic way, so that work fits into the rest of your life, and and life fits into the rest of your work, so that you're prioritizing a really like holistic picture of how you want your life to go. And work is a piece of that, but right now those boundaries are kind of more blurred. And so how do you create work that aligns with your values, aligns with what's important to you, like outside of your work too, and what does that whole picture look like? And I think that more and more we're definitely hearing that people want the time and space to really think about it more expansively than just work as a silo.
Yeah, and
these are really good.
Be sure not to discount like things that come to you when you're thinking about that 360 view and thinking about your skills that you use outside of work. Be sure not to discount the things that seem easy to you, because we are so quick to throw those out, because if something's easy for us, we assume that it's easy for everybody, and that's not true. It's easy for you because that is part of your unique value. So make sure to not throw those things out.
I have one of my favorite quotes is, "What's ordinary to you is extraordinary to someone else."
Mm-hmm.
And I think about that almost every day. Right. So that is great. I feel like I want to drop a mic, but I'm not going to drop my mic because it's attached to my computer. I wanted to say thank you both so much for sharing all of your insight and your time with us today on the LinkedIn Live. We've got about 90 people watching right now. So thank you to everybody watching. And if people find out more about you both and EvolveMe and the Reinvention Collective, how can they do that? And we'll pop a lot of information into the chat as well for folks. What's the best way for people to find out?
Sure. Well, the best way is to go to our website. It's evolveme.work. And there you'll also find information about our 10th cohort of the Reinvention Collective. Thanks for sharing that early on, Anne. It's a cohort-based experience, a virtual online training with some live Zoom components that's launching May 2nd. It's going to be in 2 parts, one in the spring and then we'll follow up in the fall. And it is for especially for women 40 plus who are in some kind of career transition and want a motivated, talented, like-minded group of women to move forward through this process of, exploring a next chapter together. So it's magic when women come together, especially like across industries, to see each other's strengths and talents, just like what we've been talking about now. And we'd love for anybody interested to reach out to us directly too. Judy at EvolveMe.work, Linda at EvolveMe.work. And for showing up already here and spending this half hour with us and investing in yourself and taking ownership of your career just by showing up today, we want to extend a special offer for you to have $500 off the tuition for the Reinvention Collective, and you can use the code SPECIAL. So we'd love to hear more about your career journeys and learn where you're at. Reach out to us. We love hearing from people directly, and follow us on LinkedIn. And thank you so much, Anne. We love having you as an expert contributor yourself in the collective. Anne it's very talented, especially resume and LinkedIn coach, and helps us provide those services in the program. Really special to work with you here. Thank you for having this conversation with us, and all the planning has been super fun. And this conversation, we could go on for hours, I know, but another time.
Yeah, we can't emphasize that enough. Anne's a really integral part of our collective. She has a training in there both on resumes and on LinkedIn, and she comes in our live session for an Ask Me Anything twice, so you get double Anne. And love working with her. Yeah, it's fantastic. So
well, thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thank you both so much. And thank you again for coming on. And just to wrap up, we have another Ship LinkedIn Live planned for May 2nd. The topic is Girl Math, Financial Principles Every Woman Should Know. Ooh, so hope to see you for that one. Yeah, we've got some really, I think we have the best guests this year. I'm just a little biased, but I think we do. So, anyway, thank you all so much. Oh, thank you both for coming. Thank everyone for watching, and we will see you on May 2nd. Bye, everybody.
Thank you,
Judy.
Bye.
Bye.